Happy holidays! Welcome to SJU. We are counting down the decade with you, and we are excited to move on to the year 2016 and the year 2017. Dan Murrell, Spencer GIlbert.
Yes.
Joe Starr.
Formative years.
Yes, the formative years. We were so young. My name is Roth, Cornet. We're going to picture this. It's 2016. Captain America Civil War rises to the top of the box office, and over in the Oscars, Moonlight ascends after one of the most entertaining debacles, I think, in Oscar history. And as a side note to that, we, the Screen Junkies, were live, and I think there's actual video footage of us reacting to them making the discovery that they had called it wrong, and it's pretty amazing. I encourage you to go watch that. It is. It absolutely is. But you know what? Those weren't the only movies that year. There were some other movies that came out that year. It was a great year for film, if nothing else. So let's talk.
That was a great year for film and nothing else.
And if you're a Cubs fan.
Yeah, it was good for the Cubs.
There you go.
Although I still cite that as the moment.
That we slipped into.
It was that's where we went into the vortex. That's what happened right there. But as far as vortexes go, there's a movie that I'm going to talk about that deals with time, and is it linear? Is it not? But before that, Mr. Spencer GIlbert is going to talk to us about
you
not.
set yourself up perfectly.
Yeah,
Then you
he's going to tease
I did?
Arrival.
Yeah.
Sorry. Talk about Arrival.
Okay, talk about Arrival. Let's talk about Arrival, because I think we all loved Arrival, right?
I love that movie.
has
We
arrived.
did. The moment has arrived to talk about Arrival, which I think we would all put on our list of one of our favorites of that year.
I'm trying to remember if I did or not. I don't know if I did. I liked it a lot.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it was in my top 10.
Oh, interesting.
There was a lot of movies to choose from.
There were, and we can check the tape, because somebody inevitably writes that down for us.
Somebody tell me if Arrival was in my top 10 list, because I don't know.
In 2016. Well, it's definitely in mine. I really love this movie. And Denis Villeneuve, as always, came through. This is written by Eric Heiserer, who came in and did a discussion with us about the film that year. And I think it's an interesting one for him, because tonally, it's actually quite sweet. There's something very soft and sweet about Arrival, but I think if you had taken the script and had a different director, it could have even not, I don't think it would have worked, because there's something about the way that Denis Villeneuve tells stories that I think allowed the sweetness in the script to come forward without it getting ever saccharine. And I might be a little odd to think that. This is a sci-fi movie that I think has so much going for it. It plays with time. The creatures are interesting. The alien creatures, just even the design work is really strong on them, and they're different. It's dealing with fourth dimensional reality, in which you divorce yourself is the absence of what we understand as the space and time continuum. But the other thing that I think is really why I think it's sweet is that at the end of the day, in addition to saving the world and yada, 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 it's important. What this woman does is recognize that she's on a path, have no doubt in her mind, not unlike Dr. Manhattan, that she's on a path to tragedy, that she's going to get hurt, that she's going to be in a painful situation in her life. And she still chooses to take that path, because it's not about that outcome, and it's not about finding a perfect outcome. It's about all of the moments that happen in between. And I just think that's a really lovely message that comes across in a, Spencer, we're going to define it for everybody, low concept sci-fi movie.
Yes.
Explain why it's low concept and not high concept.
I always get this confused.
I always do too.
But low concept means that it's like actually difficult to get across because it's kind of more character driven, or it's more of an exploration of a theme, whereas high concept is like one's a cop, the other's a dog.
Right. It's like high concept can be simply communicated, and low concept is a little more difficult to kind of wrap up in a bow, and it doesn't lend itself to an elevator pitch.
Where does one is a cop, the other's a dog, and they exist in all times at once?
I think that's happening on The Flash, right? Like this week.
It may be, yeah.
I love this movie for so many reasons. And I think Amy Adams gave one of her best performances in it. If you haven't seen Arrival, I hope you have.
Well,
just check it out.
I think you hit it too, like that balance of humanity that he manages to hit without it sort of going over, becoming too like sicky sweet. I think he is very good at giving you your cold, distant procedural sci-fi, but then also showing, not telling, the humanity in his movies, and so it gives you like a really, really good balance.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the
agree.
movie's set up, it's a good mix of direction and plot and theme, because it's about overcoming communication gaps, so to speak. So at the beginning, there is a large gap in communication. People aren't expressing themselves. There's a lot of missed clues and signals and stuff like that. So it feels very remote and stark and alien at the beginning until it gets more and more human at the end.
Yeah, I guess what I didn't do is set up the plot of this movie, which is that an alien...
We're trying to talk to squids.
Right, we're trying to talk to squids. Like an alien species lands on the planet, and we don't know why. And they don't say anything because they are very alien, which is nice and refreshing. And Amy Adams is brought in to help basically create a language with which to communicate with the species, to understand what they're trying to say to us and what we should say back. And there's a lot of fear and a lot of confusion. Are they here to hurt us or to help? Obviously, the instinct is to protect the planet and the species, but that's exactly what they're trying to do.
And their designs are so like wonderfully neutral that you shift back and forth a lot. Like some folks design aliens or creatures and to elicit a very specific response. Spielberg's are usually like, "Aw," or like, "Oh God." But with those, depending on scene to scene and what was going on in the movie, you could read into their weirdly like Rorschach-y aliens.
Yeah, and it's playing with time. It's playing with the narrative and when things are taking place in time, because that's the very nature of what the movie is about in a lot of ways. And then this idea that in the future someone's going to play an important role in your life is one aspect of the film, and another aspect is that someone's going to play, and like I was saying at the beginning, someone's going to play an important role in your life, and also that will cause pain, but that doesn't mean you should back off in fear from engaging in that fully. So I think that it's like the very simple message that I think is really important too. Like, I think sometimes we don't do things because we're afraid that it's going to end up in pain. Everything's going to end up in pain eventually. Like, that's the nature of life, just do it anyway.
That's a good segue to my pick.
Thank you.
For 2016, Don't Think Twice.
Yeah.
I'm not a big improv fan. I'm not a big fan of Mike Birbiglia's comedy. I mean, I can recognize that he's really good, and yet I love this movie. It's Mike Birbiglia's improv movie, and it's about failure, I think, more or less. It's about the things that come inevitably with any kind of creative career, probably every career, is some people will make it and some people won't, and even making it comes with its own handful of troubles and problems that come with that, and the people who are left behind are left to stew and fail, and then maybe that will bring them some type of clarity or some kind of shot in the arm or some kind of motivation to move on to the next stage in their lives. So it's a comedy. It is funny.
It's depressing too.
It's depressing.
Yeah.
But there are some genuinely funny moments. Like just the rapport that they have with each other is fun to hang out in and with. And Keegan's great. But it's just really refreshing to see a movie about show business and failure that doesn't go full like Sunset Boulevard.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, you'll retreat into madness.
Smash cut to Keegan on heroin, in an alley.
You will retreat into madness.
Yeah, look, disappointment happens, but it's not the end of your life, and that's the story. Is an improv troupe of them all. One becomes successful and gets their SNL equivalent, and the others are forced to kind of take a look at their dreams and what is happening to them.
But there's also a character that doesn't choose that actually really just embodies the idea that I do this because I love it, and that is the goal in and of itself.
Yeah, that's what's her name? I forget.
Gillian Jacobs. It's really heartbreaking, and that's the thing that I remember the most. I really like this movie too. That stands out the most for me is it's a very it's very true, and it's weird how the truest things in movies a lot of times tend to be sad. That's in one of my movies that we'll talk about. Not on this episode. Never mind. Anyway. Or no, yes, later, maybe. Who knows? I don't know. I don't know what year it is. I don't know what date it is.
We're playing with time. What does it mean?
But there's a discussion between Keegan-Michael Key and Gillian Jacobs where he's made it, and he's sort of saying like what are you doing? Like look what happened to me. Like it's time for you to do the next thing. And she's just like, I don't want to do the next thing. Like I like where I am. I'm happy where I am. Like why am I being made to choose between being happy and making the leap that I don't want to make? And it's very it just goes to show you how, I agree. Like it could have been like, oh, you changed, man. But it does show you how success and not succeeding give you two perspectives that are just immutable as far as just like looking at the world sometimes, and still trying to relate back to common experiences and stuff. And I agree, it's a really, really good movie. I liked it a lot.
Yeah.
Starr, you're an improver.
Well, I was thinking about this movie a lot when I was watching Encore on Disney Plus.
Yes.
Have you watched?
Oh, I heard about that. That's when
they reunite the High School Musical
Yeah.
cast, and just seeing those. In this case, no one on Encore so far has made it to SNL or Broadway, but seeing those like creative journeys, because there are a lot of people who are like, I had X, Y, and Z dreams, and then X, Y, and Z happened first, and now this is my path. And
We talked about that today on SJU. Today,
we're playing with time, man.
playing with time, what does it mean?
But with Gillian Jacobs, I think the interesting using like improv in this movie as like sort of a stand-in for whatever your creative pursuit is or whatever your passion is, because it's not like an industry movie. I think if you didn't watch this movie because you were like, I don't feel like watching a movie that's like about a bunch of morons that go to UCB, then like still do. It's not that. But the hard truth at looking at something and going, what do I really want out of this? Do I really just do it because I love it? And do I also accept all of the hits I'm going to take, like keeping that ship afloat, It's a really cool movie and a really like sort of like hard look at your dreams and what you want to accomplish and whether or not you're a failure because you don't accomplish them. Yeah, I love this movie.
I couldn't agree more. And that's already, we have a theme, you guys, which is that if you're doing something for the result, you're going to end up pretty unhappy in every single moment.
And you won't be able to talk to those squids.
Yeah, you won't be able to talk to the squids. I think that's the key. Sing Street is another movie about up-and-coming artist Dan Murrell.
My next pick is Sing Street.
Yes, yes it is.
Yeah, I love Sing Street. I really do. It is just like, it's like the vibrance of youth captured in this movie. If you haven't seen it, it's great. It's about this school, and it's kind of like very draconian Catholic school in Ireland. Who there's a band that forms in the 80s. This band of kids, and they're all sort of misfits. None of them fit in, and they create great music. It's one of the best musicals of this decade or any decade. The music's fantastic. On top of that, it's just really sweet and great performances. And nobody saw it and didn't get any awards recognition, but it's catching on when Leonard Maltin and Jesse Maltin and the Maltin family threw their film festival last year, this year, whatever. Sing Street, I think, was the opening night movie because it really is just got a wonderful energy to it, and the sweetness and an innocence, and this just sort of this idea of it's also about dreams. It's about looking at your life and making what you can of it, but also opportunity and the unknown. You have a character played by Jack Traynor, who is an older brother who's kind of had those music dreams that he never pursued or that never worked out for him. So there's a lot going on.
Who I really wish we'd put in our family video now that I'm thinking about it.
He's a great big brother.
Great.
He's a really good big brother. I just love it, and it's great music. It'll make you feel good. It'll make you feel a little wistful, I think, if you're older. It'll make you feel hopeful if you're younger. It'll make you feel a combination of both all along that spectrum. Sing Street, check it out. It's awesome. And Drive It Like You Stole It should have won the Academy Award for Best Original Song, but it didn't. As a matter of fact, all of the nominations for Best Original Song should have been songs from Sing Street, but they weren't.
Yeah,
so
I would have settled for Riddle of the Mott.
The Riddle of the Mott.
Well, before we get to the 1-2 punch of Moonlight and La La Land that's coming up, let's talk about Zootopia, because bunnies.
Hi, I'm the baby that likes cartoons.
No, it's great.
No, there's just a running theme with me, I think, in these, where I'm like, is it Korean or a cartoon? I like it a lot.
You like Japanese stuff too, Joe.
Yeah, come on.
In these videos, I have a theme. Man, Zootopia is just so well animated. It's fun and it's warm, and it's first of all, before we pick it apart as its dominoes collapse, it is an introduction at the idea of inclusion and racism aimed towards small children. Because yes, as adult people, we can go, wait a minute. But for a kid's like first introduction to some very heady ideas, I think this movie's just absolutely perfect. It's a really fun noir movie. The performances are great. I watch this movie a lot, probably more than I should. It's just super sweet. Oh, look at that! Look at that bunny! Look at that dumb bunny! Look at that dumb bunny and that sly fox. Yeah, it's great. It's got a bunch of weird like LA centric references that they sprinkle throughout that are super fun. This is a great movie. Jenny Slate's a great spoiler alert villain. Unspoiler alert. I just like this movie a lot. Makes me happy.
Yeah, it's very well written. It's charming, and it's light and it's sweet. Not unlike one of Spencer's picks, The Handmaiden.
Nope.
No.
This is Korean. You should see this, Joe.
This is one of my favorites of this year.
Okay, great.
So
yeah. You're gonna hear a lot of talk about Parasite this Oscar season.
Rightfully so.
Rightfully so. But if you only see one elaborately plotted thriller about a Korean con artist infiltrating a wealthy family as a servant and discovering a weird basement underneath, see The Handmaiden. I prefer The Handmaiden.
Well, why can't we see both?
I said if you only see one.
Right.
Gun to your head. Parasite or The Handmaiden. I choose
The squids make the rules, Roth.
Man, this is so good. It's from the old boy guy, so you know you're gonna get. What? What'd I say? The old boy guy?
Yeah.
It's got sex. It's got vengeance, violence. What? Why am I being weird?
Park Chan-wook, is that correct? Yes.
I wasn't gonna try and fail on the name.
No,
So I'm just
and
gonna
then you
say,
just got real gritty about it. You just became a little Jeff Bridges-y. It's got violence, sex,
vengeance,
Basements.
weird stuff in the basement. So it's great. There's a weird dungeon. That's not too much for spoiler alert. There's a lot of twists and who is playing who.
Yeah.
This guy has said that he is influenced by Hitchcock. This is a very Hitchcockian through the lens of the guy who made Old Boy thriller. So who wouldn't want to see that?
Yeah.
It's beautiful. It's gorgeous. Sumptuous, I would even say. Vaguely, overtly pornographic at parts.
That's a hot movie.
That's
It's a
all
real
right.
hot movie.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
But it is the sex is revealing of character, and I think is not gratuitous in the sense that it's advancing the plot, and it is important turns in characters' motivations are revealed in some very graphic sex scenes. So I say throw it on when the kids are asleep.
Yeah.
Watch The Handmaiden.
I actually think it's great when films do that for adults, because it's weird. There was a whole article recently about how a lot of adult films have become very sexless, and it's actually kind of strange. That trend, that said, it's for adults, and it can't be anything worse than Gaspar Noé's Love, which I don't know if you've ever seen that.
The 3D one with the...
So annoying. That movie really annoys me.
What?
In short,
a 3D.
A 3D what that goes?
You use your imagination.
You really need to connect those two dots, Joe.
I'll just say this: it's French. Dan Murrell, let's
Someone smokes
1-2
a cigarette
punch.
afterwards.
This was the big debate of the year, and I think this actually was a disservice to both films.
Yes, it was.
It became La La Land versus Moonlight, which are very, very different movies, and it didn't need to go that way, but it did go that way inevitably because internets. You're going to talk about La La Land. I'm going to talk about Moonlight, but guess what that doesn't mean? It doesn't mean that we can't both like La La Land and Moonlight.
Yeah. I love La La Land. I do. It was my favorite movie of 2016. It remains my favorite movie of 2016. Moonlight is a wonderful film as well. But I love musicals. I like the music in this film. I like the way that it's directed by Damien Chazelle. I think it's got some absolutely beautiful imagery. The way that the musical numbers are staged is like this hybrid between reality and fantasy. But sometimes going full fantasy, like with the planetarium sequence. I think that Emma Stone absolutely just crushes it, and that performance she gives at the end earned her an Oscar, and I think that she was deserving of that Oscar. This is one of the first movies that I was told I was not cool for liking, but I don't care. I love this movie.
Do you manslove it?
No one loves La La Land like Scott Mantz loves La La Land.
No one loves anything like Scott Mantz loves La La Land.
I love the movie. I love the craft of it. I love the performances. I love the music. I just think it's great filmmaking. Yeah. And it's one of the best modern musicals, and there aren't a whole lot of original modern musicals being made, and that's the other thing. It pulls that off.
Looking back at La La Land in hindsight, I think I have a weird blind spot to tone shift in movies. I have a hard time with Tarantino when he does it, when he's like, and now we're going to get a little crazy. Like, I have a weirdly hard time starting to catch up. So I was on the La La Land train of like, oh, she's just suddenly going to get a movie where she gets to make up her character and all her dreams come true. That's not how things work. And somehow my brain forgets that they were just floating in a planetarium 15 minutes before and jumping into pools and swing dancing. And yeah, it's a really good, fun, like, fantasy fable. And I love the party scene where he is angrily playing 80s hits at a house party. It's an underrated scene in that movie.
It's like a throwback film, too, to kind of classic musicals because they operated that way in a classic, like in A Star is Born, the first two. That she did. She was discovered, and then suddenly she was this massive star. Although in the last one, too, that also happened.
We got
it was kind of an overnight success.
We got one of my favorite Honest trailers out of it.
Yeah.
Moonlight was my favorite movie of that year. It really was. And it did win the Academy Award after a spell. Eventually it did. I was lucky enough to see, I don't think a lot of people saw Moonlight in a theater. So one of the aspects of the film that I don't know is appreciated as much as I think it should be is just the cinematography. It's a really beautiful movie. Visually speaking, I mean, look at that. It's just stunning. And it is. It's in relative terms a very simple story. It's a coming-of-age story in which you're with this young man through 3 stages in his life. And as he comes closer and closer into just self-acceptance, but it's also really, really heartbreaking because he's somebody who is not unlike everybody else on the planet who's really, really seeking connection and has a ton of barriers to it, including barriers that are imposed on him, but then he takes on himself. And it is, I really do think, one of the most well-directed by Barry Jenkins films of the year, well-acted, and stunningly beautiful visually, but a love story at its core, which is hard to do, again, in a way that doesn't feel saccharine or formulaic. He did it again with If Beale Street Can Talk. And I just think the world of Barry Jenkins as a filmmaker, and I think he deserves all of the accolades that he got for this film and more. And it was weird when a film does get what it deserves, then there's inevitably this kind of, I think, backlash against it.
There's Moonlight backlash?
I think there is a little bit that it's overrated, and I just don't think that's true.
I'm sure there's some people who too were like,
it's not particularly flashy
at the Academy Awards.
It's no Logan. I mean, it's not particularly flashy. You know what I mean? As a movie, it's showing off a little bit. I do think in the cinematography, which is fine. Yeah, but it's just like a simple film in a way. It's a very simple story.
Was it Ebert who said like movies are a machines for empathy, for generating?
Yeah, they are
something like that. And this is the amount of empathy they're able to generate and to put you inside the headspace and the life of was it Chiron? Was that his name? The character's name.
The character's name?
Yeah.
It was he had like different names depending on the stages. So he was let's look it up, ladies and gentlemen, which I should have had right in front of me.
Regardless, he's a largely silent protagonist that you feel like you're with him the entire way and you understand everything that's on his face and everything he's thinking, everything he's going through.
So he's little.
Yeah.
When he's little.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. He then grows up into big. I think is an amazing feat of character examination and just of putting you in the shoes of somebody else for 2 hours. It's beautiful, like you said.
Yeah, I love this movie, and I am glad that it won all of the things, and it should win.
I would be glad for either of them to win.
No, I wanted Moonlight to win. I mean, that's how I felt. Okay. Like, I really, it's not anything against La La Land. I just wanted Moonlight to win. I just thought I thought it was the better film.
I was really rooting for the Vavitch.
The Vavitch, yes. So a lot of people were.
I just wanted to say the Vivitch.
But there were other movies still that year, Joe Starr.
There were.
Take us back in time and let's talk about The Nice Guys.
Yeah, I was trying to figure. I was circling around a couple of other things to talk about. I think Deadpool's worth a mention that year. It's a really good movie on a bridge that I like a lot.
There's one scene on a bridge.
But it's a long, great. Hey, there are two very long bridge scenes in that movie. One is a bridge, and one is the bridge of a ship.
Okay.
Yeah, there are multiple bridges.
Semantics.
In Deadpool. And then the other, I was kind of kicking around Shin Godzilla, which I absolutely have you.
Your actual favorite?
Yeah, man, honestly, like you remember in SimCity when you were like, and now I want a monster to attack.
Yeah.
It is a procedural about what happens, like when that actually happens, and it's actually really fun and fascinating. But
see, that's my other reaction to Shin Godzilla was what he gave me when I said I was picking La La Land. He was like, really?
Well, like, Shin Godzilla is.
I said nothing. I respect the choice.
Shin Godzilla is the La La Land of kaiju films.
You can demonstrate your feelings pretty effectively without saying them necessarily.
My job is pitching jokes to him. I know. I'll change it. But I went with The Nice Guys. This is an airtight, perfect noir movie. This is a good year for noir for me. Bless you, sir. This is Shane Black. This is Russell Crowe. This is Ryan Gosling playing Mitch matched. No, they were not. They were mismatched, not matched by someone named Mitch. It's an enforcer and a down on his luck PI with a delightful daughter. This is so good. It's Shane Black firing on all cylinders. The house party that his daughter sneaks her way into is one of my. I'd throw that in for if we did a video called sequences but not entire films of the decade, then that would be my sequence of the decade. It's so good. Yeah. Oh, great. It's gonna click. It's gonna click.
Pre-tape that.
Yeah, absolutely. Pre-tape. I don't want to do anymore.
We broke Joe this week.
Yeah, it's so fun, and it moves and it clips along at just this great entertaining pace. Yeah, I think this is one of Shane Black's best for me.
I agree.
Yeah.
I love that movie.
It's super
really
funny, which I hate, because like in the run up to it, they were like, oh, Ryan Gosling's hilarious in this movie.
And you don't want that to be real.
Oh, is he? Oh, is Ryan Gosling really funny? Like, haha.
He is.
I know. It pisses us off, Roth. It's like, oh.
Honestly, I don't understand. Like, why is that?
Because he's perfect,
Oh.
Because you don't buy it. Because people who are that hot aren't funny. Like, I'm sorry.
But he is.
I know.
And it sucks.
And you guys tried to convince me that Chris Hemsworth also isn't funny.
Right, again, annoying.
But he is.
It's blasphemy. Who
I didn't say Chris Hemsworth wasn't funny. I said he's not as good of Chris as Chris Pine.
Someone. There were people that had the same premise that because he's so hot, he can't also be funny.
Right. Although I will say in Chris Hemsworth's case, he's kind of playing with the like himbo trope in Ghostbusters.
Yeah,
and in Thor. Like,
he's owning it a little bit.
He's owning it. Whereas like Ryan Gosling and Russell Crowe, another not noted comedian,
couple of knee slappers.
Some pretty.
I love Crowe's HBO hour. Just.
Yeah.
Gosling, they're both really funny in the movie, but Gosling is definitely more. He's the one that's carrying
Crowe's
it.
the heavy more so, and man, I was cracking up the whole time.
I know he's a great. So do you resent Ryan Gosling being funny more or less than Russell Crowe?
It's less that I resent him being funny. It's just when I would hear Ryan Gosling is so funny in this movie, I didn't believe him. I was like, no, you're giving him like 20 points for being Ryan Gosling, so you're laughing a lot more easily.
I do think this is my favorite one, probably my favorite Russell Crowe role.
Yeah.
I think he's wasted as the Gladiator guy. He's fine in Gladiator, but I think that was a mold that was not meant for Russell Crowe. I think this is peak Crowe. This is a perfect spot for him.
Here's the thing about Ryan Gosling, really quickly. There is a Gosling sheen. That is a real thing, because I remember interviewing him for the Ides of March, and like it was an audio interview. So we did the interview. I watched out of the interview, and I was like, my God.
What's he smell like?
Like cinnamon, and I'm not lying.
I thought you were gonna say like cigarettes, and I was like, you know what? It's okay in this case.
Yeah, no, like just cinnamon, but like not just cinnamon, like a hot crust cinnamon bun. It's like fresh out of the oven, just wafting. Yeah, it's like amazing. So I walked out there, I was like, he's like a genius. I think like he should probably probably be president of the world. Like, I really think, wow, what insights. And then I got home to transcribe it, and I was like, oh no, that was caught.
Everything you put on him.
Like,
you got the tractor beam?
Like it was fully fine, but very straight answers.
You got gauzed?
I got goslinged. I got goslinged. But he is really funny, and that's due also to Shane Black and his direction, the timing of that movie, which is so fast. We have another year to talk about Dan Murrell. It's 2017, Star Wars: The Last Jedi. And then we all ran away. That's the top of the box office.
That's one of my picks. They're gonna love it.
The Shape of Water wins for Best Picture, and it is not the fish sex movie.
No.
Though there is notably some fish sex in it.
It's a hard title to remember.
It's a great movie. I'm not going to resent The Last Jedi, but I do think this, Joe Starr, I think we should just pull off the Band-Aid, and I think we should talk about The Last Jedi.
One last time.
Just
kidding. We're going to be talking about it forever.
Yeah. Hey, we're going to talk. You know what? I almost took it off the
Playing
list.
with time.
I almost took it off the list because, again, this weird nebulous week in time where we're talking about it. Everybody's screaming about it again. I love this movie, man. As a Star Wars movie, as a meditation on failure and adjusting your expectations for your heroes and what a hero's journey it looks like after the camera stops rolling on your story. This movie's really beautiful looking. It's so well shot. I'm trying. Since this is the last time I ever get to talk about The Last Jedi, I'm trying to put every defense and thing that I love about the movie into one just like casserole of nonsense. I love Luke Skywalker's arc in this movie. It's not sweet and it's not kind, but it's true. This is a guy who through that original trilogy was constantly struggling, constantly doing the wrong thing. Put your hand down. This is my time.
Why is she giving Poe Dameron lip? That's my question about the movie. I mean, like, she got a little fresh.
He got
and
a lot
mouthy,
of people killed.
You know, she was pretty mouthy.
Yeah, remember
don't
how?
you think?
So like, our boss is named Michael, and if I went to our boss and was like, "Hey, give me the answers,"
you know I am,
and he
not.
fired me, I'd be like, "That tracks."
Yeah.
Because you're my boss.
I'm kidding.
No, I know. But also, I don't think you are, because I don't think you guys like this movie very much.
That's such bullshit. That's such bullshit.
I got her.
No, that's so annoying. That's so annoying. Why does it have to be binary?
No,
that is everything that's wrong with the conversation about this movie. If you go back and watch Dan and I, it's hour-long GD review. No part of me said that I did not like this movie. No part of me is not a fan of Rian Johnson. You can have critiques of a film and not hate the movie. And I was obviously being facetious about her being lippy, though she is quite fresh. Go ahead.
Quite fresh.
She's quite fresh.
Quite fresh.
She's Laura Dern. She can do what she wants. But I love where they take Luke in this movie. He's an imperfect hero in the original trilogy, and I think that guy he's not suddenly going to be perfect. You know, he's going to do his damnedest with the resources that he's got, and sometimes you hit the home run and sometimes you don't. And I think this is a cool movie about younger people taking a look at these legends and realizing some truths about them and realizing they can't just lean on them forever. And that they have to step up themselves. The visuals in this movie are great. I love the Kurosawa stuff that Rian Johnson leans into in the Battle of Crate. As weird as Canto Bight is, and I absolutely agree, like, Canto Bight is a weird side quest. The look of it, I love. The Brazil references, the Wings references are fantastic. The Citizen Kane stuff in Rey's Dark Side Cave visit. It's probably one of my favorite Star Wars things. I really like this movie a lot.
You know, we like blockbusters around here much of the time, Dan Murrell, and there's another one on the list that actually did break the format and refreshed it. We all loved it. You know it. You love it. It's Logan.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say, talk about the line between legend and reality. You know, the myth and the man. That's what Logan's all about. And that's why it's one of my picks of 2017.
Oh, yeah.
Nice pitch.
Logan's good. Y'all have seen Logan.
Y'all remember Logan?
Yeah. It's kind of it's got layers to it because this is kind of a movie that's about the X-Men movies, and it's kind of about how cartoonish and like unsatisfying they've been, and how now this is going to kind of like right the wrongs and kind of. It's a film about looking back on your legacy and thinking like, has it all been BS? Has my whole life been building to nothing? As the character of Logan is we find him at the beginning, and it's like, no, the past had some value. I am going to move forward. I am going to inspire another generation of people. I'm going to find some sort of meaning in my life, even though when we meet him, he's like in the depths of depression and alcoholism and wondering what it was all for. Mm-hmm. And I think that's like an analogy for superhero filmmaking in general of the last 20 years, that it has been just kind of fluff and all for nothing cinema-wise. And aside from the theme stuff that I like, I really love the action in this movie, that it never feels like so many other superhero films where, you're doing some plot and then you stop and you have a car chase, or you're doing some plot and then you stop and then you have a big army fight and then you pick up the story again. Like this seemed like, from the car chases to just any time Logan's claws came out, it seemed like it was building from his character, and it was propulsive, and it was just perfectly integrated with the movie. The tone, the tension building and falling, and action rising and falling just seems so smooth and so like effortless. I loved it, and I think that this gets maybe unfairly said that, they're just ripping off old westerns. I say no, they were ripping off Terminator 2, and it's much better to do. And who doesn't want to see another Terminator 2 with Wolverine?
There is a little bit of that, but there's also Paper Moon. Is also in there in that relationship a little bit. It's great, and why not rip things off and play with them? Like, what's the point of cinema
otherwise? I think that is the future of, if you can't make good movies anymore, and you can only do it with a superhero on top, take great movies and put a superhero on top.
Just put a bird on it.
Put a bird on it.
And the meta around this movie makes the audience's heart breaks for Hugh Jackman, and there's so much emotion around the idea that like, this guy's been Wolverine for 10, 15, 20, 30 years. And this is going to be our final goodbye. But then underneath that, Daphne Keane owns this movie. Yeah. She's so good in it. She's also great in His Dark Materials. If you were wondering if she is a one-trick Logan girl, she's not. She's an awesome actress. But everyone around him in this movie is just fantastic. The Alzheimer's, loss of a parent stuff with Xavier is so rough and so hard to watch. And I don't think that we genuinely might not get a movie like this. This might be a one-off now that it's in part of Disneyland. So
I hope not.
We'll see. I know. Enjoy what we have. I can't see them doing that with the X-Men.
What does Logan Land look like at Disney?
I mean, there's just like tumbleweed and despair.
You get a lot of blood.
Just kind of. It's a little bit like Westworld, I think.
Yep.
And there's a lot of whiskey. Dan, call me by your name.
Dan.
I was hoping.
It's a good dad joke.
Very good.
I really was.
Joke.
I was hoping, and you did.
Yes. Call Me by Your Name was my favorite movie of 2017. First of all, beautiful film. Just it takes place in Italy in the 80s. It's very gorgeous and lush, and just the way that it's brought to life is very vibrant. It's got that vibrance of like memory, like a good memory. It's about a young fella played by Timothy Chalamet. I was like Timothy Chalamet, who has
is that Nell saying his name?
Timothy in the way.
He has a summer fling with an older dude who's played by Armie Hammer. They also had a wonderful bromance. Go look up. There's like a whole compilation of clips you can find of just like Timothy Chalamet and Armie Hammer's bromance, which is incredible in real life. And then they have a romance in this film. It gets, anytime you have a story about two men or two women that have a romance, it just sort of gets pigeonholed as like, it's a gay movie, it's a gay love story. And it is certainly a romance between two men. But I think there's a lot more going on with it. I think that it is about that stage in this character, Timothy Chalamet's life, where he's trying to figure out like what desire is, what is love? Like, what's being loved? What do I love? Who do I love? Is it sex? Is it not? Is it like, what is it? You know, because it's not just him and Armie Hammer in this movie. He has a relationship with a young girl who lives by nearby. He has a relationship with a piece of fruit as well. Very famous peach. Yeah,
it was a peach.
It's a peach.
It was a peach.
So it is very much about this almost wistful. I imagine this movie being the image that this character plays in his own mind of that summer as he's an older person. Just about this discovery and the weight of like thinking that you found the person that you're gonna be with forever, and you're so young, and the last 15 minutes of this movie, number one, I think it's in the last 15 minutes, you have a speech from Michael Stuhlbarg.
Oh yeah,
should have had him nominated for an Oscar.
That was a good year for Stuhlbarg. It was
a really good year for Michael Stuhl. He was in The Shape of Water. He was in a lot of movies, in The Post, I think, that year too. He has this scene with Timothée Chalamet where he sort of imparts this experience of being an older person and what it's like to look back on the period of life that his son is in now, and it's just full of it's heartbreaking, but also like there's a warmth to it, and you just wish that you had everyone had the dad that would sit down and have that talk to you when you were like going over like through your first heartbreak, just about like, enjoy this, don't rip this out of yourself because you don't want to feel it, because you're losing the good too, and you're gonna want that. It's just it's beautiful. It's a beautiful speech. And then the last shot, which the credits actually play over, Chalamet is so good in this movie, which is literally just about a 4-minute close-up shot and uncut on his face, and the whole movie plays out on his face as the credits roll, and it's just, I love this movie. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I did too. I think we all loved it, right?
Yeah.
That was
that Stuhlbarg. That scene is so good, and something else I just wanted to add to it is he makes such an interesting choice that I think just adds an extra layer, where it's not just like a wise father imparting this knowledge. I think he makes a choice to play it that he's like almost uncomfortable and nervous to tell his son this story. Like he's making this decision to be vulnerable about this specific bit of himself in that scene, and it just that extra little bit of choice just makes that scene so warm and really just wonderful.
It's weird that there's a sequel coming.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Call me by two name.
The Fly. Do you remember The Fly in that last shot?
The Goldman one? No. Wait.
There's so in the shot of Timothée Chalamet, the camera stays
okay. Yes, not the movie The Fly.
It's not the movie The Fly. There's a fly in the frame, which obviously it's meant to be snowing outside in winter, and you wouldn't have a fly. So it does to some degree break the reality, but he's so good and he's so present that they obviously just chose to keep that take anyway. I don't think it really the fly could be coming through his frame and it still doesn't break the reality. That's how good he was.
Did I miss something where flies die in the winter?
There's not as many flies in the winter, notably, as there are in the summer. There's not as many bugs, period, in the winter.
I never noticed that.
You never noticed that?
No.
There's fewer flies in the winter.
We don't have a huge fly problem here, and it's been so long since I lived in the South. I guess I never really noticed that there were fewer flies in the winter.
Yeah. I mean, there are. Really, okay, let's move on from the fly talk. Well, but we should do fly talk later.
There's this ant problem that only acts up when it rains.
Right, because they come in from the rain.
Yeah, so flies don't do that?
Coming from the rain?
I don't know.
We're getting lost in the weeds. We're never going to get through
fly weeds.
I'm sorry. I shouldn't have even pulled on
this. This is Bug Talk.
This has been Bug Talk. Joe Starr, there's, if you've ever asked yourself the question, what would it be like if a young vegetarian ate the finger of a loved one? Raw is there for you. This is a French coming-of-age horror movie about a young vegetarian who goes to college and discovers her love of the human flesh, frankly. And it's just like, it's so great. It's a really the simple film, again, I guess in terms of the premise. That's the premise, and then she discovers kind of more about her family. The director is Julia Ducournau. There was another film that was sort of similar that was, I think, Dutch, where it's like a young woman goes goes to college and then sort of discovers an inherent power or ability, or in this case, is it a curse or an ability? It's certainly a craving. It is a metaphor for a sexual awakening to some degree. It's brutal and bloody and funny and weird, and I love it. And I highly recommend that you see Raw if you didn't already see it that year. I feel like it's on like Hulu or something.
Yeah, that was a blind spot for me. That's one I got to jump on.
Yeah, you've recommended that a bunch of times.
I know, and nobody's listening. That's okay. Lady Macbeth also came out that year. Get Out, Lady Bird. There were so many good movies that year, but we're going to finish this off by talking about, Joe.
Have you done two?
Nah.
You did Logan. We've all done one, everybody.
Oh.
Yeah, that's how long we're talking, Joe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, be warned.
Video starts now.
The video starts now. So we can move on because you did a crowd pleaser.
Yeah.
In both of these. And we love The Last Jedi, and we're going to let you talk about the one that Mr. Taika Waititi gave us.
Yeah, a lot of good sequels this year. John Wick 2 is great. Paddington 2 is a delight and my religion. But Thor Ragnarok, there's the tits, man. I love this movie. Thor Ragnarok's so fun. It's my favorite comic book movie. I think it's the best Marvel movie. It's just loud in the best way possible. It's a house party. Thor Ragnarok is the cool guy that you've always wanted to hang out with, like, and fight, and you do his like crazy cool guy house, and it's everything that you ever wanted it to be. The soundtrack's awesome. It's fun. Taika is so smart at working in these strong character beats for all of his characters, but working them in a funny way that never like stops his movie to be like, okay, well, now it's time to be serious so that Loki and Thor can have a real conversation about what it means to be brothers. No, they're going to do that on an elevator on the way to hatching a plot to throw Loki at some guards so that one of them can put an electrocuting thing on the other one's neck. And then 2 minutes later, they're going to make a big dick metaphor with a spaceship gun. Yeah, this movie is pretty perfect.
Yeah.
It's the tits.
It's fun.
Yep.
It's bright. It's loud. I think it's what it feels as much like a comic book coming to life as anything.
Yeah. Oh, the Kirby references, the visuals in this. If you were like, oh, Thor Ragnarok looks goofy, he is pulling Jack Kirby out of the panel. This looks more like a Marvel movie than any, literally like Captain and the Game Master or the Page Master or any other movie where someone gets pulled out of a book into reality. That's what he did literally with Jack Kirby, and Jack Kirby was very confused.
I hope he got paid
because he was an old man who was not ready for that.
I thought when you said pulling Jack Kirby out of I thought you were about to say grave. I'm like, that's harsh.
Oh.
No.
That's a terrible
Grim.
Yikes.
Grim.
Son of the Spirit! I'm Jack Kirby! Yeah,
That's what it would sound like if it was in that movie, though.
Oh yeah, no, Thor Ragnarok.
It's pretty rock and roll.
Thor Ragnarok is the best fireworks display you've ever seen.
Yeah.
Love it.
There's a theme that Spencer has going on, and that is the performances of young actresses in the Florida Project and Logan.
Sure. Yeah. Florida Project stars 2 kids.
The spiritual sequel to Logan.
Spiritual prequel and sequel to Logan. Whose names I don't recall.
Playing with time.
They're great. This movie walks a fine line. It's hard to make a film about poverty and about poor people, because if you're too finger waggy, like look at your choices, look where they end up, it's kind of just mean and cruel. And if you're too much like, oh, the nobility and oh, they're so put upon, and then it's just like you're going too much in the other direction. You want to present them as real human beings with things to their advantage and things that are working against them. And I think this movie does that so well. It got criticized as poverty porn a lot,
Really?
Yeah, that was the accusation that it was exploitive. But I think that maybe because it used a lot of real actors or people who weren't actors, like actual people from these communities that I had no idea about, because this is a real situation of these people who live in these motels around Disney World, and it's like, for the lack of other services, it's basically shelters or temporary housing. Like you live there, but there's these kind of just punitive laws about how you can't live there long term. So once a month, you all have to like leave and go somewhere else and then check back in. And it's all through the perspective of these 2 children, and it's very much like an idyllic world that they live in, because they don't know how hard they have it. They're seeing the wonder, and their poverty that they find themselves in is a playground to them. They're playing in these abandoned buildings and these derelict spaces and stuff like that. But the movie has this sense of like sort of dread because the real world is closing in around them throughout the runtime, and it's just a matter of time before they grow up, before they realize the circumstances that they've been born into. And it's heartbreaking. It's also uplifting because, you can still find these moments of joy, and it's got the best performance from Willem Dafoe, the warmest, sweetest, most human and least scary Willem Dafoe performance you've ever seen, which I did not know he had that here.
It's so funny that because you were saying the best, and I was like, it's great, but I don't know if you've seen The Lighthouse, and then you went warm and human, and I went, oh no, that's not The Lighthouse at all.
Right.
Yeah, no.
Remember the part where he gets on that little girl's face and he's like, why did you spill your beans?
Yeah, he's fantastic.
Did you see it? I assume if you know that line.
No, that was the trailer line.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I haven't seen Lighthouse yet.
It's great. It's so weird. I'm fully. Lon Harris has been advocating for this one pretty hard, and I have to join him in that call to the Lighthouse. But there's a movie that's also out this year called Uncut Gems, which we talked about earlier today, Dan. And the same directors did Good Time. Got kinetic, charged performance out of Adam Sandler this year and out of Robert Pattinson that year.
Yeah, Good Time, directed by Josh and Benny Safdie. I'm not sure.
I think it's Safdie.
Safdie.
I think it's Safdie.
It is just, first, as you mentioned, Robert Pattinson is so good in this movie. And if anyone has any doubts about Batman, and I've said this 1,000 times, it's because I like this movie and he's great in it. Yeah. Watch this film. He's so good.
And The Lighthouse.
Sure, and The Lighthouse. Yeah. What they've done with this movie and with Uncut Gems, and I want to go back, and I have not yet watched their earlier films. I have one or two other ones that I haven't watched yet. But what they've done with these two in particular is they have managed to like bottle chaos and put it on film
in a non-Joker stuff way.
In a non-Joker stuff way, yes. It is because they're both pictures of these two guys, and Robert Pattinson in this film, he's got a brother who he's trying to he's trying to stay out of trouble. His brother is has special needs, and so he's also trying to make sure he's taken care of. And it's a series of escalating bad decisions, and that's what Uncut Gems in this movie have in common the most. Is it's two characters who are deeply, deeply flawed, but not unlikable somehow, who through their own weaknesses and errors keep getting opportunities to get out of trouble and instead make the decision that makes the trouble even worse. And it's like the noose throughout the whole film is just slowly closing, and it's frenetic. It goes between being hyper realistic to almost like dreamlike at times, and it is literally just this slice of life of like the worst night you could imagine for this guy and how he keeps making it worse. But again, it's in a way that you don't dislike him. And I think that's what the Safdie brothers do so well in this film and Uncut Gems, is you have characters who are doing things that are not good things, but because they're able to sort of show you the moving pieces of their lives and the intricate parts of their lives, you understand why they're doing what they're doing, even if you don't agree with it. And that's a very difficult line to tread. So to do that on a screenwriting level, on a directing level, and then editing wise, to put all of those pieces together is really, really impressive. And they are together just... They're on my list. It's as far as like new directors, it's like them and Ari Aster and a few others. Yorgos Lanthimos isn't new, but he's new on my list as far as like a director that if they're doing something, I will go see it no matter what.
Well, couldn't agree with you more. However, I will say this warning about Uncut Gems. Have you guys seen it?
Not yet. No.
It is hard to watch, and it's not to me, and it's not necessarily in the sense of it's hard to watch because it's painful or violent. It is those things, but that's not why it's hard to watch. It's hard to watch stimulus-wise. It's like being in the middle of Times Square on New Year's Eve with a migraine headache. It is non-stop chaos and noise and stimulus and stress.
You'd say more so than Good Time?
More.
Okay. All right.
More. Because they're using, I'm super sensitive to sound, and they're really using just background chatter to make you feel like ice picks are being driven through your eyeball. I did not enjoy watching that movie at all. but God, it's really well made.
See, for
It's
me,
really well made.
that's what sold it, because otherwise, in both of these films, I think their cinematic technique is these characters are doing things that
So stupid.
from a third party perspective, if they didn't throw you into the chaos of their lives as an audience member, I don't think you would ever understand why they make some of these choices. It's like, why would you do that? But because they sort of bring you into it, and they have a very claustrophobic style sometimes, where you just can't escape. The characters are in small rooms, or they're in these situations, the camera's very close on them. You can't escape it, and they translate that chaos so much that, again, they're doing these terrible things, but either terrible on a moral level or terrible for themselves, or both. You get it because they put you in that moment, and it's just such a visceral way of telling a story, and I love it. I agree. It's like it's not something you pop in to have a good time. No pun intended.
Yeah.
But it is something that's a very experiential type of filmmaking, and it's very unique.
Yeah.
To them. There's only a few other movies, Requiem for a Dream being one of them, that I've watched like these two, where I feel like I am with those characters, like I am in that room or that world with them, and I'm feeling what they're feeling. And it's very impressive.
I mean, to your point about it being about empathy, that he's giving you characters that are very difficult to empathize with because they're not likable at all, and yet you're able to.
Yeah, Good Time does the trick of like, but he's doing it all to save his disabled brother. And like, you can really get away with anything if that's your motivation.
Totally. And so Good Time, I actually had an easier time watching, and I had an easier time living in his skin for that reason. Uncut Gems, he's so self-destructive and full of avarice that I wanted to claw out of my own skin watching this movie. I mean, it's really a great performance. And to your point, it's incredibly effective about forcing yourself in this position that you don't want to be in for that period of time.
How'd I get into this position?
And that's why he's not getting an Oscar.
And that's why he's not getting an Oscar. Yeah.
Where's those gems?
If you could imagine, the crazy thing is, it reminds you that Adam Sandler could be a real actor if he wanted to be.
Yeah.
He twice in every 20 years, he chooses to act.
Yes, he emerges like Locust.
He does. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Anyway, not that I'm sure he does other stuff.
Don't touch the Jimmy.
They're all gonna cut gems at you. Sorry.
I can't wait to see it.
I mean, he did it to himself.
He did.
He
did. He did. But he did.
So-
He came out with Punch Drunk Love.
Yeah.
And he was like, I'm not gonna do that again.
That is the shit.
Yeah. Oh God. I'm not going to talk about the last movie. I'm just going to move on. Blade Runner 2049. We all loved it.
Yep.
It was great.
Yeah.
I think I talked about Denis Villeneuve in the last hour, 2 hours ago for Arrival. If there's a filmmaker that I will literally go see anything he does, it's him.
You're gonna be pumped about Dune.
Yeah, I am, honestly, because I had an affinity though for Blade Runner, and he was like the one filmmaker I thought actually should touch it, because the first film I didn't want Ridley to go near because he had become such a different filmmaker over time, and the one person that I thought actually could pull it off was Denis Villeneuve, and he did, in my opinion. And the whole question in Blade Runner, of course, was like, are you a replicant, are you not? And I think he made a brilliant move with Blade Runner 2049 by negating that question entirely and saying the point is that it doesn't matter whether he is. Like, that answer is totally irrelevant in how we evaluate humanity and how we evaluate value. It's what's at question in that movie. I think it's beautifully done in every single way, and you guys should check it out. You like it more than Blade Runner. I wouldn't go that far.
Okay. I think I just had to take that side for a movie fight.
No,
You did, yeah.
I actually do like it more than.
Well, okay. You just had to movie fight me about that.
Yeah, it's hard to, because look, you got to give Blade Runner credit for
You do.
influencing an entire visual language.
Yes.
Like that's talk about like influence on anime, influence on film, on science fiction, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think he gets a few bonus points for originality, but I'd rather watch Blade Runner 2049 again.
Yeah.
I'd rather watch them both back to back, which we can do over the holiday break. And I'm Mae West. Good to see you today. Thank you, kids.
Type this up.
Let me tell you about replicants.
Thank you so much for liking and subscribing and sharing on notifications, commenting, hitting that bell. You can pre-order Never Surrender on iTunes before it comes out on December 17th, which is in the past. We're playing with time. Shenanigans. Joker stuff. We'd also like to call out A26LA, a lovely organization that Joe's been talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man. They're a nonprofit that tutors and helps underserved communities with creative writing. One of the kids in that picture is going to write the next big time Squid movie.
Yay.
And we'll have 826 to thank. So we've got the website in the description. Visit it.
Well,
Figure out how you can support.
thank you guys for squidding around with me today. The most superior cephalopod is still an octopus, but I think we're very happy with the squid talk from today. And Dan Murrell, anything you'd like to say to the people before we sign off?
All good movies. Seek out, well,
Watch them all.
we all endorse these movies individually, so seek them out if you so desire.
Yes, very politically done.
They're a range of good to great movies. I will say, in my opinion, there's not a bad movie in this bunch.
I like all of these movies.
Yes.
And Joe Starr.
I like garbage.
No, you don't. You like lovely films. I think you made a lot of really strong points about The Last Jedi, and I regret giving you guff.
It's okay. I'm very needy.
But I am pretty fresh and mouthy, so that's what you got. We'll
Dye
see
your hair
you.
purple. We got a movie going.
Mutiny!